What's up guys, Alex here back with another unboxing video of the GOAT Power Bikes Dirt Goat 3 kilowatt. The specs on this bike are nuts guys. It has a 3,000 watt motor, max torque is 380 Newton meters, has quad piston hydraulic brakes. The range is 40 miles, but it has a top speed of 55 miles per hour. And more to come of the Dirt Goat 6 kilowatt. It also has a 6,000 watt motor. The battery is a 96 volt with a 120 amp controller. It has a range of 93 miles at low speed and 56 miles at high speed. The max speed of this bike is going to be 65 miles per hour, and it has a torque of 465 Newton meters. All right, now that we got the bike all out of the packaging, got all the plastics and foam off, we have everything laid out. Bike pretty much comes 85 to 90% assembled, so this should be pretty easy. In this box right here, we have our toolkit, some extra bolts, a big Allen wrench, and some risers for the stem. So if you wanted to adjust the height of your stem, you can make it go up and down, along with the battery charger. That'll be in this box. Also externally, we have the right side peg, the little front plate, and the front mud flap. And then over here we have the wheel. And now that the bike is out, to make things easier, we can put the bike on a moto stand, or in this case, we'll be putting it on a toolbox to stand it up and make everything easier. The bike will be standing upright. I'll put the front fork up so we can put the wheel on. And we are going to just set the bottom of the bike right here on the skid plate on top of our toolbox or moto stand. Now that we got the Dirt Goat up on the toolbox, we just want to shake it around, make sure it's not going to fall off of the toolbox, so we don't want it to fall down while we're working on it. So let's get right into it. Put on the front mud fender, and what we'll need is just our toolkit. Come in here, so you can see what's inside the toolkit. Looks like we're going to want the smallest wrench set in the toolkit, which is a number 10 and a number 8. Break them all loose. Once we break them all loose, we should be able to just unscrew them by hand. All right, now all we are going to do, make sure this is out of the way, line up the holes. There we go, so we'll screw them all in mostly by hand, and then we can do the final tightening with the wrench. A little trick is I'm just going to use the wrench vertically, put it over the bolt, and just start tightening them like this. No need to over tighten them, just snug is enough, and if they by chance come loose later, you can always just retighten them. All right, there we go, now we got the front fender on. Up next, let's put the handlebars and attach them to the stem. So we're going to get one of our wrenches, our Allen keys. It looks like it'll be this one. Typically, this is a number 5 Allen key if you're using any of your own tools. Going to loosen it, take the bolts completely off. Be careful when removing these bolts. You don't want to lose the little lock washer that's on there. So we will remove them with caution. All right, now that we have the stem undone, we want to make sure we have our handlebars oriented properly. You'll see that the brakes say mineral oil on them, so these will be facing up instead of, if we accidentally did it reverse, they'd be facing down. So like this. Pro Max is what the brand of the handlebars are. We're going to make sure that those are facing forward. And then once we have it set right on there, we can go ahead reattach the face of the stem and go ahead and tighten these with caution to not cross thread. Don't worry about the plug for the display being in the way. We can move that up and down just by loosening the display. What we want to make sure of though is that we have the handlebars straight. The display comes on the handlebars straight most of the time, about 90% of the time. So just make sure that there's an even gap in between the display mounts and the stem mount. Once we have these kind of snug, we can turn the wrench horizontal and just give them a good tightening. Be generous with how much you tighten. Don't over tighten, obviously, but just tighten it a little past snug because we don't want the handlebars to rotate as we're going over jumps or going over big bumps. All right, handlebars are on. Next up, let's attach. First, we will plug in the connector for the display. There'll be a green cable hanging down. I want to make sure that they line up the arrows on the side right here. There we go. And next up, we will put on the faceplate. So again, with the faceplate, we're going to use our small wrench, same as the Fender. Once we loosen them with the wrench, we should be able to unscrew them the rest of the way by hand. Now that we have all the bolts off, we can line up the faceplate. We'll put it under all the cables because we don't want to pinch any of the cables by putting it under. Line up the holes, thread it by hand first on all four. Right now that we have them all started, we can just tighten them mostly by hand again and do the final tightening with the wrench. All right, now we have the faceplate on, the mud fenders, the handlebars installed. Next, before we do the wheel, we will put on the right side pegs. For the peg, we will need one of the Allen keys given to us in our toolkit. So now we can come on over here. Looks like there are 2 bolts that we will need to undo. So if we line it up like this, we see it's going to mount here and here. Not here, so take out this bolt towards the top. Now we can install the pegs. Put this through. Try to start it by hand if you can. Now that we have them started, we can now tighten them down. All right, and that is how you install the peg. Last but not least, we have the front wheel. So what we will do is that looks like is what we will need our big Allen key for. Looks like it easily will come unscrewed from this side. And the hard part will be trying to pull the axle out. So I'm just going to try and push it out by grabbing the middle of it and just pushing it out. If you're unable to push it out, you may need to loosen these. Not all the way, but just loosen them until you can pull this out. What we'll do is we are going to pull out our brake caliper guard which prevents the pads from falling out during shipping and in the box. Then we will bring our wheel over. These caps that came on the inside of the axle will go on each side of the wheel. Be careful, they might fall out as you're trying to put them in. It may be a little bit difficult to line up the wheel properly, but let's try to get the rotor into the caliper. All right, now that we have the rotor inside the caliper, we were able to get one side with the axle through, and that's at least going to hold up the wheel for us. So what we can do is now try to maneuver the wheel, get this cap in here, push the axle through a little bit further. And on this side, I'm going to have to hold up the forks just a tiny bit, but it looks like we got it through. Then we'll just take this nut again, or this bolt, and get it started without cross-threading. All right, we'll tighten this down. And make sure that when you're tightening this down, it's not spinning on the other side. In this case, it is not spinning on the other side, and that's why we are able to tighten it down. But if it was spinning on both sides, this wouldn't be tightening. So just want to make sure we get this nice and tight. There we go, it's nice and tight. Wheel is on. We have all the external accessories put on, including the wheel. Now this thing is ready to ride. Before we take it for a ride though, we want to make sure our brakes feel good. So we'll come over here, feel our brakes. They might be a little bit spongy right out of the box, but just give them a couple pumps. These brakes feel good. Rotate this one. Yeah. You might have a tiny rub right out of the box. Nothing to worry about. If the rub continues, quick and easy trick is to take your 5mm Allen key, loosen these top and bottom bolts. Just loosen them, hold the brake lever, and while you're holding the brake lever, you can re-tighten down the caliper. And that will typically get rid of your brake rub. All right, now that the bike is all assembled, we want to check a few things before we take it off of our stand. Looks like right out of the box, these brake levers are a little bit loose. So we'll take one of the Allen keys provided to us in our toolkit, come down here, and just tighten them up. Get that nice and tight, make sure it's not wiggling up and down. And then for the other side, we kind of just want to make sure that we have them at an even level. So just maneuver it up a little bit or down. And then we can do the same over here and tighten the lever. All right, and also while it's still on the stand, we can, since the back wheel is free, we can take off the key, get the bike started up, and make sure it's functioning properly. And what we'll need to do is we'll need to unlock this, which will unlock the seat. We'll fold the seat up. We will switch this on. There's this little white panel with the blue switch, so we'll switch it up, turn the battery on. And now you can see it's about halfway charged right out of the box. And we'll come over here, put the key straight here into the ignition, give it a turn, and the lights should turn on, display turns on. And then what we'll want to do is we'll come over here, hit the brakes, make sure those work. And then we can test our throttle. Be careful testing the throttle, make sure everything's clear, so that we can test the throttle and the brake. There we go. This bike is all set. Looks like it's ready to ride. Obviously take your first ride with caution, but let's take this thing off the stand and take your first spin.